Hey guys, welcome to Spiritual Formation for the Family. This is a podcast by Central Baptist Church to help families grow in their spiritual formation because we do think that spiritual formation is done best when it's done in community. And what better community to start in than your own family? Today we are starting something new. We are going to be doing a series that I'm actually leading on Wednesday nights called Across the Aisle. And you're going to hear a lot about that here in just a second. But on today's podcast, we have our good friend of mine and co-worker, Al Lambert. He is the Director of Technology and Media here at Central Baptist Church, but he does so much more than that. He is a minister in every sense of the word, and he leads in lots of different areas, and he is our resident prayer warrior and evangelist. And so I have asked him to come on today. He actually has no idea what we're going to be talking about, but I've asked him to come on because I think his story is going to lend to what we're trying to accomplish today in a really cool way. So we hope that you enjoy this new series as we embark on Across the Aisle. All right, welcome to Spiritual Formation for the Family. This is a podcast of Central Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Texas, and we've got something new that we're going to be doing all semester long. So we are actually going to be releasing podcast episodes every week because on Wednesday night we started a new series called Across the Aisle, A-I-S-L-E. I have spelt that wrong multiple times.
You did.
But
First time I got the info from you, create a graphic. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not the smartest man when it comes to book smarts. And right away, I was like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
I was like, maybe doing a pun on words.
You were thinking like island there?
Yeah. I was like, okay, Kobe's going to do something funny with words. And I text you, and right away, you were so humble. You're like, nope, that's not right. Like, you just didn't even defend it. You just got to own it, that English is not my best language. I don't know I don't have a second language, but I just know that English is not my best language. Right.
So there's a couple things, and you have no idea. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have any idea why I asked you to start this podcast with me?
Not at all.
All right. Well, this is good because you're going to enjoy it.
That's the way I like it.
That's how you like it. So I want to just give like a quick overview of what Across the Aisle is and why we are doing it. And then I've got some questions for you, Alfred, that I think you are going to enjoy. So there's really, it kind of boils down to 3 or 4 different things. Some of them I think, probably aren't even worth sharing here. I shared them with the group. But instead of sharing those particular things here, I really want to focus on one thing. So as I look at 1 John chapter 2, verses 9 through 11, and by the way, this is just one of the passages that talks about this. It says, whoever says he is in the light and hates his brother is still in darkness. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. And one of the things that I am most I would say that like right now at this point in my life, there's like a few things that when it comes to American Christianity that I'm like, ooh, this is not a good trend. Now there's some other things that I'm like, hey, this is a very good trend. But one of the things that I'm worried about is that you have Christians across denominations that are walking in darkness because they hate their brother. Mm-hmm. And it's all because of like theological differences. Like, oh, this person's a Calvinist. Oh, well, this person's an Arminian. Oh, this person is a Molinist. Oh, this person, all the isms, right? Like the different things. And then you get into, and by the way, that's just within the Baptist denomination, and then you get into like across denominations where you start asking theological questions like, can women be pastors? What about the priesthood in general? What about baptism? What about some of these things that we would obviously say, hey, these are core doctrines that we need to be very attuned to. But, we do have to acknowledge that across the aisle, there are differences. There's going to be differences between how a Methodist processes some of this stuff and how a Baptist does, how a Presbyterian and a Baptist does, how a Presbyterian and a Methodist does, how an Anglican processes it differently from an Eastern Orthodox and so on and so forth. And I mean, we could go on. There's a long list of things. So I wanted to do a series where we could investigate what is being taught across the aisle. But here's one of the other reasons that I really wanted to do this series is because I think most of the time, like I'm a Baptist and you're a Baptist, right? Mm-hmm. You're a Baptist minister, I'm a Baptist minister. Yes, most of the times when a Baptist hears about what a Lutheran believes, or, I mean, you could fill in the blank with any denomination. Most of the time when they hear about what somebody else across the aisle believes, their immediate thing, excuse me, they're hearing about it from a Baptist. They're not hearing about it from a Lutheran or a Methodist or a Presbyterian or an Eastern Orthodox or something like that. Like a lot of the people here, and I've done this, by the way, too. I'm not saying that it's like a terrible thing. I think that we can speak to what other people are teaching, but if I have not lived it, if I have not believed it, if I haven't like felt that theology in my heart, then I'm probably not going to represent it as best as it possibly can be represented. That is a skill in and of itself, to be able to look at somebody you disagree with and be able to represent their belief system without straw manning it, without like making something that, it doesn't represent them very well at all. So I wanted people to hear what's happening across the aisle from the people who are actually across the aisle. And so basically what we've got going on with this series is there's going to be like 3 weeks, and we've already done 1 week. So this will be week 1, the podcast accompanying the week 1 teaching. We had weeks 1 through 3 where we're just learning like some core doctrines of the Christian faith and how to defend them from our perspective. Number 2, how to ask good questions. So that would be the second part of the series. And we're only going to spend about 2 weeks doing that. So all in all, there's going to be like 5 weeks of what I would call training.
Okay.
And then as soon as we get done with that 5th week, we're going to start bringing in a pastor and or theologian from all of the major Christian denominations to come in, and we are going to practice good question asking and just basically interview this person and let them speak for themselves. And at the end of the interview, if there's anything that we didn't think to ask, we're just going to say like, hey, is there anything else that you are really wanting to that you're really wanting to share with us that maybe we didn't ask you? And the goal is not like an argument. Like, we're not going to try to defend or attack necessarily positions or anything like that. It's not like we're not trying to proselytize this pastor or theologian, and we don't want them to proselytize us. We just want them to share, like, hey, this is what my system, my denomination believes. This is what we teach on a Sunday morning. And the goal is really simple. Like, we ask ourselves the question, hey, can we cross the aisle here? And I think personally, in the majority of these interviews, we're going to find, the overwhelming majority of these interviews, I think we're going to find like 100% we can cross the aisle.
Right.
And the goal would be like, hey, I can now start loving my brother. We've got differences. We get it. Everybody gets it. But now I can cross the aisle and extend the hand of fellowship in these areas and stuff like that. So that's the whole goal. So you got part 1, it's kind of a training ground. Part 2, learning how to ask good questions. Part 3, and that's going to be the longest part this semester, we're going to be bringing people in.
Okay.
My goal here is that, and we'll see what kind of time these pastors and theologians have. I've already got a couple on the hook, and got a few more leads on. Got 2 more leads. So we've already got like a pretty decent lineup, I think, in the making. I'm going to see if these guys can come in and do a podcast with us before they do the interview, and then we'll release the podcast after the interview. And so I'm really excited about this.
It sounds really cool. Have you ever got to visit any other denominations like outside
the churches?
Of Baptist? Right, yeah.
Just like on a Sunday morning?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Okay, cool.
But that's the reason I wanted you on this podcast, this first one.
Okay.
Because is it fair to say that you're not a Baptist by birth?
Exactly. No, I was Catholic, raised in a very strong Cajun cultured Catholic family.
Yeah.
So the Cajuns, like our culture, for people who don't know what it is, I'm from Louisiana. It's from a French culture, but majority, especially like the older ones, like from my parents and generations down, Catholic is like majority.
Okay.
Of what everybody, my whole family's all Catholic.
And then you. And I know that you also spent time like at other denominations as an adult. So you grew up Catholic. What are some like non-denominational recovery churches, stuff like that?
Non-denominational. I mean, when I came to Christ, it was in a small little Baptist church. I wasn't at all thinking about denomination at all at that time. It's just where I ended up going. It's where God led me. And then when we moved to Texas, the first couple of places I visited was non-denominational. Like I went to a Worship Under the Bridge.
Yeah.
With Mr. Donnie.
Donnie, you had, yeah.
And that was kind of like one of those community type churches that met underneath the overpass. And it wasn't at all about, it wasn't at all about even like so much focused on doctrine, denomination.
Wasn't that like a homeless ministry almost?
No, but some homeless would show up.
Yeah.
It was kind of one of those things, if you just didn't want to really be in a church or go to a church you can go to, which I wanted to be in a church. I just happened to get invited there first. And it was really cool. And then after that, I kind of felt like a lack of community from all that. I wanted to be involved more. I wanted a community.
Did they only meet on Sunday mornings?
Sunday mornings under the bridge, and it was really neat. And it really had a great value to it. But I got invited to this other church called Second Chances Church, which is no longer, they would meet in Jacksonville, and it was really cool. A lot of like urban missionary type stuff, like meeting people on the streets, people getting out of prison, young families who just unchurched. And, it's probably about 20 at our lowest number, 50 people, like, with the kids and everything. It was a normal Sunday. So smaller, non-denominational. Again, didn't really focus so much on doctrine. Just kind of came out of the Bible. It wasn't about denomination.
The focus was recovery for.
Yeah, a lot of it was that, and a lot of it.
Well, excuse me, like God. Obviously, the focus is the gospel.
Absolutely,
but like it was like a recovery ministry type.
Yes,
church.
but they didn't mention stuff like your views and stance on end times, or like like there's like.
Oh, that's a yeah.
I mean, it was right out of the Bible, but we didn't like. I guess a lot of people that were coming into that church didn't know the Bible real well, but the pastor really did. The pastor really did, but he would meet people. I mean, this guy could sit with an atheist or sit with like somebody into witchcraft. He was like, like Bryce Crawford.
He
was a lot like that kind of guy. He was this young pastor that was like a rapper.
Bryce is an interesting guy.
Man, he is.
He's an interesting guy because he seems to be well read and he seems to be pretty intelligent, and he can go in and have conversations with just about anybody.
He can.
So that's kind of like the vibe of that.
The vibe of that was like that. Now that's kind of how the church was kind of modeled, and it was really cool. But that church. Just different things happened, and we ended up not having a building. Well, the church shut down, and I got invited to Central. And so the Baptist church.
How long ago was that?
2017.
You're 45 right now?
I'll be 45 in November.
45 in November 2017. So that was 9 years ago. So in your mid-30s is when you first entered a Baptist church.
No, my first church I went to is probably, I'd say 2014. That's where I came to Christ, is in a small Baptist church.
Oh, okay.
Back in Louisiana. So it was before we moved.
Okay, gotcha.
My first church was Refuge Baptist. I had a pastor invite me. I was atheist. I'm not going to go far back in my testimony, but I was an atheist, and things had really got bad. Well, me and my wife had split up, had some issues. We got back together. Christ started to reveal himself to me in ways. Well, anyway, this pastor invites me to church. I go home, tell my wife, and we go to this church, and her uncle or somebody had went in her family, and that's where we came to Christ, in a small little church called Refuge Baptist. It was an old school church, singing out the hymnal, maybe 20 people in the church, very small, very sweet people. They just loved us. The second we walked in, invited us straight to a Baptist potluck.
Oh, there's nothing like a Baptist potluck.
There's nothing like it. And a Cajun Baptist potluck, buddy. You haven't even been there yet. A Cajun, South Louisiana Baptist potluck.
Give me, what is one of the dishes that you could see at a Cajun Baptist potluck?
Man, like a rice and gravy. Like rice and gravy is really big where we're from. They always, like, y'all would call it a stew. Us is a pork rice and gravy, a beef rice and gravy, chicken rice and gravy.
Let me tell you something about being a Baptist, all right? If you have never experienced a Baptist potluck, there might be reason, regardless of theological differences, there might be reason enough to become a Baptist just because of a Baptist potluck. I mean, those are beautiful. All right, sorry for interrupting. Yeah. So little church, and then that's when you moved to Texas, got involved with Second Chance Church, and then in 2017.
So that's kind of where my ministry launched, is when I came to Texas.
Okay.
So in Refuge Baptist, it was a really, really good, small church. Things had kind of been done through the years a certain way. It wasn't really big on evangelism, and they were very sweet. They actually were the first people to allow me to do worship. I was in a death metal band at the time, and the pastor walks up, and this old lady played piano. He's like, "Hey, she can't make it anymore. Aren't you a musician?" I was like, "Yeah, but pastor, you know the music y'all do?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I do the opposite." And at that time, I was being convicted. I kind of quit cursing in my music, but I was like still in these bands, just heavy screaming. And so he laughed, and he said, "Come on Wednesdays." And they do a little singing thing, and he taught me, have you been to Jesus for the healing power? Are you?
That was a different vibe for you.
And I'd never even really heard hymns.
Oh, really?
So in the Catholic Church, it's
a very different worship style.
It is. It's kind of like hymns, but Catholics, I think they do some hymns, but there were some things I'd never really heard. And man, I was like, wow, this is kind of neat. We did some, just hearing some hymns for the first time. But as far as ministry, I'd never done anything ministry-wise. And when I got to Second Chances, this pastor was on fire for the Lord. And, bro, we'd be driving, and he would just all of a sudden pull his car to the side of the road. He's like, "Come with me." And I was like, whoa. And we just walk down this hill and through this neighborhood. He's like, "Bro, there's some people over here." He said, "We need to go pray with." He's like, "I've been thinking about these people." And I was like, "What?" And he just walked up to these dudes that,
This is the guy in Louisiana?
No, this is here in Texas.
Oh, Second Chances.
Okay. Yeah. Faces tatted up, people just out of prayer, and he could just reach them right there. And I was just like, and those people, I fit with those guys too, But I just saw the way he treated those guys like royalty.
Yeah.
And loved them.
Yeah. Gave them dignity.
Gave them dignity and just like invited them to church. And when they came to church, it wasn't even like a sales pitch. He just knew they needed the Lord, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, man, I know this is good. Like I started picturing Jesus and like Paul, people in the Bible. This is what they were doing back then. So I was like, oh man, and I loved it. Well, Second Chances closed. And like for 6 months, I didn't really find a church I liked. So I was just kind of in limbo. And someone invited me to Central and sent me a message on Facebook. And at first I was like, no way. And I was typing this message like, bro, I can't go to that church. You know, and I'm all tatted up. Like I just couldn't do, I was thinking these like a country club, bunch of rich white people, just uppity people. And I was like, man, this is going to, well, I tell my wife, Kayla, man, this guy's inviting us. She was like, oh, are we going to go? I was like,
at that time, so, you know, for those of the folks that will only listen to the podcast, maybe not see you.
I still look the same.
You look very similar, but I will say, like you did look like a guy that's like, oh yeah, he plays in a heavy metal band.
Yeah.
And here we are, a predominantly white middle class church, decent size, you know, about 450 to 500 people. How did it feel coming to? How did it feel? Because I mean, you're no longer in like Little Church, Louisiana.
Right.
You're no longer at Second Chances Church. You're at a place where, like, you know, you might have a guy sitting there, and actually, I can't even tell you anybody who does have a Rolex. I just know that like there probably are people in our church that could afford a Rolex.
The Rolex.
And so it's like, again, how does that feel going into that setting?
Have you ever been to like court?
Yeah, I've been on jury duty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no. Have you ever gotten in trouble? Okay, not court. Have you ever gotten in trouble at school?
Yes.
Do you remember having to go to the office or something?
Yes.
That's how I felt. Like leading up to, I felt like we were like in the car. Like, I'm gonna walk in here. I'm just gonna try to get. I was thinking, I'm gonna prove my wife wrong. I'm gonna show her we are not. This is a.
But it didn't have anything to do with theology or beliefs.
No, I was judging everyone because I thought they were gonna judge me.
Because of the way you looked?
Yeah, I was just thinking automatically. And I mean, honestly, walked in, I was so wrong. Everybody was really, really sweet. I got tricked into going to Sunday school class. Whoever invited me told me that.
I got tricked.
Yeah, church was at 9.
Yeah.
Came, they put me in Sunday school class, and it was actually really, really cool. I loved it.
Were you and David in the latecomers class?
I guess with Garrick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But right away, you were preaching the first Sunday. Mike was out of town.
I remember you telling me that, yeah.
And Mike had started, you know, he was already here. He's newer to the church. But anyway, within 5 minutes, I looked at Kayla. I said, golly, this is awesome. I said, we ought to come back Wednesday. Like right away, I just knew. But Central, just kind of fast forward a little bit, was where I feel like my ministry had started already because at Second Chances, I became the worship leader over there. Yeah. You know, but anyway, I started doing evangelism, you know, but over here, it started sinking in about like really getting into the meat and the potatoes of the gospel.
Yeah.
And even just to know, I didn't even know what a Baptist really was.
So like when you started, so it's safe to say then that you first started learning about doctrine probably at Central.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I didn't know what a Baptist was, even at the first church, the Baptist church we went to.
Yeah.
I just figured, okay, this is just, I didn't really know understand. I knew what Catholicism, I know a lot about being a Catholic, like really.
So you probably had like some level of understanding of Catholic doctrine. Then.
I do.
Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I do more. I can look back at all the stuff I learned and I can kind of really understand it now.
Yeah. Okay.
But I didn't understand what the Baptist church was. We were told as, like, or not taught this, but the way I saw people, when I was a kid, the Catholic people talk about Baptists, and it's just because they didn't know. They were like, "Oh, them Baptists, like, boy, they got it wrong. They missing it. They are." You know, and like a lot of Catholics were like that. And I always thought, I've heard when I went to a Baptist church, and Catholics said, and Cajuns are like, "Oh, Alfred, that's a cult, man. You can't get in that thing." It's like, man, and I was just like, oh, whatever. But
that potluck though.
Yeah, potluck hit, you know. But I didn't really realize what the Baptist church was.
Oh, that's cool.
And
so let me ask you this. So obviously you have and what was that church? Was that a Baptist church that you went to, Cypress?
Yeah. So when I moved back to Louisiana in 2020, I'd been in Central from, I guess, 2017 to 2020. In 2020, I'd got an offer of my job, and it was a great, great offer. And I had to move back to Louisiana. I hated leaving Jacksonville. And the church I got invited to, it was the only church that was open in the area during COVID. Huge church. It was like 2,000 people in a service. Really, really good church. And I mean, that was huge. And I thought Central was really too big at first until I got here and I realized, I thought the whole church was the sanctuary. Looking from outside, I was like, dang, thinking thousands. And it was 400 or something like that. But anyway, Cypress was huge.
So let me ask you this: is it a different flavor? Because a lot of people think that we as Baptists are like homogenous. That like if you got one Baptist church and another Baptist church down the road, we just automatically believe the same thing.
Right.
We have some commonalities, but we are not homogenous at all.
Not at all.
So would you say that Cypress is like very aligned with Central? Or
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was important. I mean, Central is kind of like, man, Central just kind of set the tone where I remember thinking like things had set in, and it made us actually pickier about churches we would go to. Before, we would just kind of show up and do whatever.
Yeah.
Even in ministry, if somebody invited me out to something, sometimes there were things I went to, I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have came here. that I'm saying made me really check into stuff like, what do these people believe? Like, what do I believe? It made me even ask myself questions like, what is a Baptist? What am I saying? What am I coming to? And all that. But Cypress was like that. Cypress is a lot more modern. You'd almost feel like it has a non-denominational vibe. But it has these roots. It's an older church.
Yeah.
It's an old church that came out years and years ago. And so they had a part of their church that used to be a sanctuary where like 9 a.m. we call it the old folk service.
Yeah.
Like you have like 100, 200 people that would meet. But even some of the older people came in a new sanctuary. But being in there was like being at Gateway it was like this huge production. But man, did some great ministry.
Yeah.
And
I know that you told me a lot about there. So let me, okay. When you see then, because like for somebody who has kind of made the denominational travel, now you haven't been to all the denominations, but you've seen some stuff, right?
Yeah.
You've heard some stuff. You've been in some different settings. How do you, when I say that I have this fear that people are living in the darkness because they're hating their brother or their sister, do you affirm that? Do you push back on that?
And not everybody, but I have some friends that are Catholic, and I'm going to say this about Catholicism because I was raised in it. I mean, my family used to have, my grandmother and them, they'd have the Eucharist. They'd come to their house and they'd have the big golden cross with the Eucharist in it, and they'd have people come and do these house church, they were like doing the novenas. I was raised around it.
A novena, what is that?
It's like this long prayer, and it's like, man, they get really deep into it.
Yeah.
When some of the first people I talked to in the Baptist faith when I came to Central, and I can put anybody on the spot, but didn't know anything about Catholics, and they were saying, man, like they were looking at Catholic like it was a scary thing, like they weren't Christians, that they were like in this cult. I stand on the side where I look at Catholics like my mom and dad are diehard Catholics. They believe in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. He was crucified, died, and was buried. Like they believe that core what I believe. And I was able to talk to some of my Baptist friends and help them understand. And they'd be like, wow, I've never saw it that way. I was able to talk to some of my Catholic friends that they kind of look like we're just doing a piece of it. Catholics, a lot of them don't believe that the Baptists are wrong what we believe. Like I know some Catholics that admire how much we dig into Scripture because, in the Catholic Church, they may have a homily and they give a talk just like we do a sermon, but it's shorter. But they have a piece where the priest actually goes over. He has a thing right out of the Bible. He's going over, and that's kind of where they get it. But I was never challenged as a kid. I went to Catholic school. I was raised in a Catholic church to dig deep into my Bible. Now, some churches may be doing it. They may have Catholic churches, honestly.
What is the when you were growing up Catholic, when you spent time at Second Chances Church, and people brought up, and maybe you yourself, people brought up Baptists. What was like the general vibe? Because I hear you talking about the people in Louisiana, like it's a cult. Like were they like, oh, those people a little stuck up? Those people a little bit,
You talking about at Second Chances?
I'm just talking about anywhere. Like what was like the general vibe that maybe a non-Baptist felt about a Baptist in your experience?
They feel like a lot of the non-Baptist people feel like Baptists overdo it. Like we turn to the Word, like we're just like so big into theology that's like all we're about.
Like theology
rules,
snobs?
like very theology snobs. A lot of people's like, man, y'all. And I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes they're right. I've been around some people that I've been like, man, you know what? I know some Baptists that I've came like, and I've close friends and people that I still today that will admit that they've gotten so far in theology sometimes that it's been up here in their minds and not in their hearts at times.
Man.
And I know some Catholics, man, that have this devout honor of Christ, that they raise Christ up on the golden throne and can get on their knees and cry out to the holy King Jesus, that I'm like, dang, because I'm going to be honest, I still hit my knees in prayer. I love to get on my knees. I like to get in a dark setting. I love that vibe of reverence. I do. And I think that Catholics a lot of times look at Baptists like we have lost that. They're like, man, y'all get in there and do some songs, and look, y'all get into word, but golly, y'all are missing the heart of Christ.
I do feel like there's going to be some people who really do not like this at all. But I think that like one of the deals about this series is that I just want to be as raw and authentic as I can be without, being abrasive or things of that nature. But I look at like 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1-3. It says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to the hardship that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. And like to me, like that right there, for us as Baptists, can be something that I think we really struggle with, especially with the knowledge part and the, giving our possessions and our body over, because like we're all about missions, right? We're all about Bible missions. Like that's our two things. It's like, hey, fill yourself up with the Bible so that way you can go tell people on mission what it is that you've learned. And I'm sure that like there's gonna be some people like, that's not what it is to be a Baptist. I agree, that's not what it is to be a Baptist. I just think that that's kind of what we have become in a lot of ways. And by the way, those two things, really, really good things.
Absolutely.
I just think that it's possible for us to abandon another passage too. Like you had Paul telling the church in Ephesus, like, hey, you got people trying to sneak in and jack with your doctrine. Well, fast forward to the book of Revelation, chapter 2 and chapter 3, where you have the 7 letters to the 7 churches, and John comes in and he's talking to Ephesus on behalf of God. He's given this prophetic word to them saying like, hey, you have protected your doctrine. So like, here was the warning from Paul. Paul was saying like, hey, you got to protect your doctrine.
Right.
And then John comes in the book of Revelation, is like, you did a good job, but you left your first love. And to me, if there is one big thing that we as Baptists have got to guard ourselves against, we've got to guard ourselves against losing love for other people, including brothers and sisters in Christ who come from different denominations. And by the way, like you see Baptists, the infighting within the Baptist denomination, I think echoes that as well too, where it's like, guys, like we are losing our love if we don't dial this stuff back. Now, would we receive the same commendation? I believe so. I think that we would receive that same commendation where God would be able to tell us like, yeah, you have protected your doctrine. I think maybe there's some cases where we've gone too far with doctrine. I think that there's some places where I wouldn't say that there's really any place in the Baptist denomination where we have become lax on doctrine.
Right.
I do think that there are places that we've gone too far, where we're saying like, oh, hey, this is a tier 1 issue and going from there. So I want to talk about that just for a second, because for those that cannot attend the class, I want to be able, for people who are listening to the podcast, to be able to do some things alongside the class. All right. So the first thing for this first session, there's 2 things that we want you to do. All right. Number 1, we want you to sit down, give yourself 10 to 15 minutes. We don't want it to be a long time, because if it's a long time, then you have more temptation to just go nuts with this. We want you to sit down, turn some music on, and for between 10 and 15 minutes, we want you to write down the most important things that Christians believe if you were talking to a non-believer. So like if a non-believer came up to you and said, hey, Al, I'm an atheist, or I'm an agnostic, or I'm a Buddhist, Hindu, whatever. I need to know what Christians believe because I'm curious. And you've only got 10 minutes. You're on a train, the train's stopping in 10 minutes. It's like, okay, well, what are the most important things that we can do there? We want you guys that are listening to like literally, if you need to stop right now in this podcast and do that, we want you to take 10 minutes and write down the things that are most important to you if you were to tell a non-believer. All right, so that's kind of homework number 1. Homework number 2, and we can attach this PDF to, I guess, can we attach PDF links to podcasts on YouTube?
I can do anything.
Golly, dude, you're a beast. All right, so we got a sheet here that kind of explains this, but in theology, now Baptists have made this pretty popular with, we call it theological triage. And we basically put it into 3 units. Triage being like, hey, you're in a hospital, you go into the emergency room, they're going to put you in line in order of importance. Like if you come in and you just lost your arm, they're going to be like, hey, we got to take care of this guy pretty quick. Like this is an important deal. If you come in and you've got a 104 fever, they're probably like, okay, we're going to take care of the guy with the lost arm first. We're going to take care of the guy with the 104 fever second. If you come in and you got the common cold, they're going to take care of you third. Right? Like that's the triage unit. And so for us, like we have 3 tiers as well too. Now, you talk to different theologians, you talk to different people, they're going to probably differ on how to organize these 3 tiers. They're probably definitely going to differ on what belongs in the 3 tiers. For this class, we are going to define what the 3 tiers are. And again, we can have differences here, but we're just, when you hear us talk about for this course, in this series that we're on, this is what we're saying. When we say tier 1, we're talking about gospel essentials, and that to deny any of these things would be to step out of the historic Christian faith. Meaning, like, hey, we are going beyond what you need to know to be saved, because that list is like, I mean, you look at Romans 10, 9, and 10. If you can confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And it's like, boom. So we're saying, okay, we're going beyond that list, and we're saying, all right, you may be a Christian, right? Or you may have like received that teaching, but now you've heard about maybe these other things. It's like for you to deny that would be for you to step outside of the Christian faith. Maybe you had an experience with God, but you're not inside of the historic religion known as Christianity. So that's the tier 1 things. And I'm going to say this right here. Tier 1 stuff, for me, it's a small, very small list.
Right.
Very small list. Now, some guys want to add to it, and I would look at them, and we'll address that later on. But it's like this whole tier 1 thing is like, hey, if you deny this, you are simply not a Christian. And these are the things that are really, really important. All right, tier 2 would be those things that help us discern what church or which denomination I'm going to belong to. Meaning, like, I may, if there was some guy, I'm trying to think of like a good tier 2 doctrine. Okay. I mean, all right. Like, so here's like me and John Piper, right? Like I'm not a Calvinist, but when this isn't a best one because like on our staff, we have Calvinists and non-Calvinists. I mean, it's kind of we make it work because I think there's mutual respect there. But like John Piper, like frequently taught on the doctrine of election from a Calvinist point of view. Now, here's the deal. I follow his podcast. I like his teaching. I couldn't sit under that teaching every single Sunday.
Right.
Because like there's too much difference between what I believe about soteriology, that area, and what he believes about soteriology, that if I'm just like sitting under that teaching every Sunday, there's going to end up eventually be some conflict there. Like I would never be able to teach Sunday school in his church. I would never be able to be on his staff because of how like dogmatic he is, that like, hey, this is my belief and I'm actually going to push this on the people. It's like Piper is not just okay with holding the belief. He wants other people to have that in his congregation as well too.
For sure.
And I think that's kind of the cool thing at Central is like we have differences theologically at Central, but we're not trying to like force feed somebody.
Well, no, I got friends at Central. I have friends at Central that are Calvinist, and I got some hardcore Calvinist friends, and I got some friends that are like, man, there ain't no way.
Yeah.
And they come to me and ask me, well, what are you? And bro, I listen to a Calvinist, but they could sit there and lay all their okay, that sounds good. I listen to a non-Calvinist, okay, that sounds good. What are you? I said, I'm a Christian. Like I follow Christ. Like, and look, I always said it like this. I'm not doing all the ist and all that. I mean, I know some people that's really important. I'm not going down I don't go down all that. But I say this: I'm able to pray with my Calvinist friends and my non-Calvinist friends, and do life with them and be in small group settings and worship.
Let me ask you this, on that topic, in which I don't want to get too far off on that trail, but like if you were in a setting like say like at Central, and all of a sudden Mike were to change up the way that he preaches and communicates, right? And he's like now really trying to push either like, hey, we are going to be all Calvinists here at Central, or hey, we're going to shun Calvinism at every turn, and if you're a Calvinist, you're not welcome here. Like,
I wouldn't like.
You probably have like a problem with that, right?
I do.
And so I think that like that's the issue of like the tier 2 doctrines. It's like, hey, these are important doctrines, and depending on how that church presents those things,
they can become idols.
They can become. That's a pretty good point right there. Yeah, depending on how this church presents that stuff, you may say, hey, I'm not going to participate in this denomination, or I'm not going to participate in this church because of it.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're not a Christian. Doesn't mean we can't have fellowship.
Absolutely.
But it's just like, hey, I'm probably not going to attend there.
But it'd be no difference as going to a church that just starts getting hyper-focused on politics, right? It's okay to go vote. Go vote, man, have a stance on something great for you.
Yeah, that's good.
But I don't need to walk in church and you just start, okay, why are you Republican? Are you doing like, look, I'm here for Jesus. I'm here for Christ. I'm here to like, that's how I feel. The same thing with a lot of that stuff. I'm not saying it's not important, but there's some areas where I'm like, I feel like that can become like politics if you allow it.
Yeah, for sure.
And divide you. And that's not good for ministry sometimes,
So then you have the tier 3 stuff, and the way that like we're kind of talking about the tier 3 stuff is like, hey, you're probably sitting in the pew, if you still have pews at your church. We have them here. You're probably sitting in the pew with somebody who has differences on a tier 3 doctrine than what you have. And by the way, like there's going to be people that disagree with this, but I would look at like eschatology, like what happens at the end times. Like that would be like a tier 3 thing for me, where I'm just sitting here like if somebody's like, hey man, dispensationalism, like that's the way to go. To me, I would just be like, hey, you can hold that, I can hold that, and we're going to still sit here and sing Oh Praise the Name together on a Sunday morning. But this should not divide us at all, any shape, form, or fashion, all that stuff like that. So the goal here is, which by the way, I do think that when it comes to the tier 1 stuff, to me, that list needs to look overwhelmingly similar from Christian to Christian. I do think that there is a little room for nuance on that tier 1 list. I think that like you could bring your tier 1 list, I could bring my tier 1 list, and if we had maybe the same 5 or 6 things, but maybe you added 1 or 2, or maybe I added 1 or 2 or something like that, I think that we could still be pretty confident that like, this brother's a Christian and we got fellowship there. On the tier 2 list, that's when you're going to start seeing differences. Because again, like here I am serving on a staff where like I have soteriological differences, where I have, eschatological differences, where I have, what different spiritual disciplines look like, differences and stuff like that from people on our staff. And it's like, hey, I know that those people have the same goal in mind. I know that they have an open mind. I know that they do not dishonor or disrespect me, and vice versa, right? There's like this mutual submission there.
Right.
And as long as like we have that, then we can have, a lot of harmony. But there might be somebody who comes in and be like, no, if you have a soteriological difference, I'm not going to church with you. You might be a Christian, but I'm not going to church with you. And so that can be where like a tier 2 list looks different from person to person. But for the most part, if you're going to be attending the same church, your tier 2 list probably looks very similar.
Right.
Your tier 3 list, man, it could be all over the place, as far as differences are concerned. And so what we have here on this PDF that we are going to attach is a list of different doctrines. And by the way, the list of doctrines, the entire list of doctrines is ridiculously long. We just put some important things on there. Some things that like we know that Baptists hold very dearly, that we know that Methodists and Lutherans and Anglicans and Catholics and Eastern Orthodox and Presbyterians, all of them like hold very, very dearly and have different opinions about. All that you're going to do there without spending a ton of, and this is the key, I don't want you to spend a ton of time studying yet.
Right.
The key is like, hey, let's just hear your raw opinion. What tier do these different doctrines fall in? And you're just going to go through and just put 1, 2, or 3 on each one of them, and basically you're going to keep that as we move into session 2, which is actually part 3 on the handout, but it will be session 2 as far as weeks are concerned. So I'm looking forward to this series, and of course, Al, I'd love to have you back on in future weeks. If you will.
Okay.
Are you in?
I'm in.
All right. So there is the homework and there is the kind of teaching for this week about what we're doing. It's really just kind of an intro, and we're going to dive into it next session.
All right.
All right. We'll see you.